I'm about to talk to you about two subjects that are particularly unpopular, particularly with the press. People don't like outbound dialing because they don't understand it, and they don't like scripting because they don't understand it. So we could have a very short session and say don't use it because it's not very popular. So instead, I'm going to have a sort of half an hour session telling you how to use it properly and actually make decent use of it, because it's not a technology that's going to go away anytime soon. Certainly, it's going to be sniped at in the news and various documentaries, and as you've seen, the whole fundraising industry has been blasted recently out of existence by the Daily Mail and their associates. So, in the name of protecting the consumer, these technologies are seen as the main sinners in the market. So let's see how we can make or inject some virtue into this sort of sinful activities. A little bit of explanation why I'm here. I run a company called Noetica. Mitel is rebranding our product as Mitel My Contact Center Outbound. So basically, this is marketed worldwide under the Mitel brand, but luckily for everyone here, we are based just across the river here. So we are a British company, and we've been producing this technology for about 20 years. What am I going to be talking about? Number 2 is the most important one, trying to debunk some of the myths surrounding the concept of call scripting and predictive dialing and dialing in general. And what are the benefits for actually not abandoning these technologies? So as I explained before, My Contact Center Outbound and scripting is a Mitel OEM product. So for all intents and purposes, a Mitel product sold through the Mitel network of channel partners. All support for the product is provided by us centrally from our offices here in Central London. So, a little bit about the market, the contact center market. Now, as you can see, outbound dialing is a relatively small part of the market. However, this is a rather large market. The contact center technology market is about $3 billion annually. I guess that's about £2 billion. And 8% of a big pie is also quite a big number. So there is quite a lot of activity in the outbound market. There's a lot of players, and the market is worth about $250 million annually, just for outbound. Now there is a sort of bit of confusion between outbound in general, what outbound is, and what cold calling is. Now, these are not synonymous things. Cold calling is somebody calling you out of the blue and trying to talk to you about something you don't have any interest in. That is dying, and that is disappearing from this world. And I'm quite happy about that. However, it's being replaced by other types of activities, and I'll go into that a little bit more in a minute. Call scripting is another big no-no, and I'll talk about that in a second as well. But that is larger than the outbound market, actually, because it spans both outbound and a lot of inbound activity as well. Actually, scripting is probably more used for inbound than for outbound. Call scripting. Now, we've seen the advertising campaigns. I think Lloyd's had one about 5 years ago. We've thrown away the script. We're not using scripts, which is fine, because they probably never did use scripts in the sort of Hollywood sense of the word, or television crime series sense of the word. Scripting is not about putting words into the agents' mouths. It's not about telling them what to say, how to behave, and all that kind of stuff. So it's just a bad name for a technology. If you call it that, people will immediately associate it with parrot-like call after call type work. It's nothing to do with that. So it has always been seen as a tool of oppression, patronizing your agents, being inhuman to them. That's not the case. The truth is that it doesn't tell agents what to say. It does introduce a lot of efficiency because it makes calls shorter, more effective, increases customer satisfaction. It provides a lot of MI, which is you can't normally get purely out of the telephone system. Out of the telephone system, you know what calls you had. So basically, who called whom, when, but you don't know why. You don't necessarily know what was actually discussed in that call. Not as a data item. You would know it if you listen to the recording. But if you want to run a report and say, what were these calls about, you wouldn't know unless you use something like call scripting. It is an essential data capture tool, so allowing, running quickly campaigns that allow you to have somewhere where agents can input data. And of course, it reduces training, ensures consistency. So basically, it's there to map a process. It's not there to tell agents what to say. So how does this work? We think about scripting in the same way that you would think about your sat-nav system in your car. So in that sense, it is supported by a set of maps, and you are the author of those maps. It's like an atlas of all your business processes, all the processes that take your agents from hello to goodbye. And the way you build this is simply through a drag and drop mechanism. You build these maps visually. Now, for an agent, you get a call connected. The next thing that happens is that the script may actually go and dip into a database, find a bit of information about the person that's calling you or the person you're calling, and then it will go and present a screen to an agent. Now, it wouldn't necessarily tell the agent what to say, but it will basically tell them that at this point they should be talking about a certain subject and make some choices. Now, depending on these choices, the system will then decide which routes to take further from there. So it will take on one route, then it could make a further decision saying, within that, I'm going to make another decision about the next branch, and then eventually we'll present a further screen to the agent that say, at this point, please talk about this or capture some information, and so on and so forth. Basically, presents the agents with a map. Now they can go backwards and forwards and sideways and navigate in any way they want. Eventually, they'll exit through some kind of exit gate out of that. And that gate will be the disposition of the call. So they will then know what the call was about, in addition to all that other data. Now, that's probably a very good example of a slide that shouldn't exist. Far too much writing on it. But I'm going to go very quickly through this. About 10 reasons why scripting is actually a good thing. It's a manifestation of a business process. It's there to remind call agents what the process is. So they don't have to, go through books, manuals, paper scripts. I've seen laminated scripts that agents go with felt pens and mark things off and then wipe them for the next call. So it certainly does that. Call scripts guarantee consistency across all the call centers. So basically, we had examples where, depending on which agent you ended up talking to in a call center, you would get different treatment. So people got wise to this, so actually they ended up calling several times until they got a refund. So you get consistency in the handling of calls. Paradoxically, using a script allows agents to act more naturally rather than less naturally. And the reason that is because they can rely on the script to give them a sort of guidance where to do next. They can spend more time listening to what people are talking about, and they don't have to concentrate about what am I supposed to be doing next. So you will find that people that use call scripting, or agents who use call scripting, are actually a little bit more relaxed during calls. I mentioned before this idea of producing MI, so I'm not going to do it again. Deploying scripts actually forces the business to think what is actually best practice. So in many cases, you will find that just by implementing something like this, you will suddenly realize that you don't have a process for these things, or nobody actually thought what the best process would be, or how to improve it. Training, of course, is reduced. A call script is very often used as a skeleton for unifying your agent front end. So basically what will happen is that you would have already applications that you use in the contact center. The question is, you don't want to throw all these applications at the agent every call in their face. What you probably want to do is to take them, to guide them through a process in which these applications are being brought to them as and when required, and possibly avoid cutting and pasting between these things and actually making sure that information flows between this application. So use it as a sort of glue that glues together all these other applications that you're using. Scripting is clearly integrated with telephony and IVR, and that can provide agents information when the call starts, so they don't have to ask it again. How many times did you call a financial institution? You had to repeat your credit card number, first to an IVR system and then to an agent. Some agents are better at their jobs than others. So by studying how the good ones do stuff and then implementing it, you'll find that the agents who are not that good will be lifted to not to the level of the best ones, but better than they were before. And finally, regulatory requirements. This is where the bad press for scripting started from, where agents are forced to read boring legal text and saying, you know, your house is at risk if this and that and the other. Well, yes, you can use it for that, and in many cases, it's important that you use it for that. But it's not really the main reason to use scripting. So there's some ideas here of how you can spot an opportunity, whether you actually need a dialer or whether you need scripting. I'm not going to go through all this, but in principle, if you find that there's a lot of paper on desks, if you find that agents are using aids, you know, yesterday I went to see a call center where agents are dialing out, but instead of using a dialer to do it, because they don't trust the dialer, they have little spreadsheets and they're hiding little bits of paper with customers that they can call and all that kind of stuff in their drawers or in their pocket. There's clearly an opportunity there to automate this stuff, to get a system that actually works for them and they trust it. So, outbound. We've talked about scripting. What about outbound? Dialers. You know, dialers are also the spawn of the devil. So how could we, in what way is it used? So let's look at some industries. Finance appears both in inbound and in outbound. Telemarketing clearly is an outbound market. Fundraising is outbound, but almost dead at the moment. Various clubs, you know, wine, holiday, timeshares, drink distribution, and so on. Insurance, it's a major outbound market. Media, subscriptions, renewals, advertising sales. Market research, of course, now that we have so many different elections and referenda. Outbound activity. This is what I was talking about earlier about the spread of activity. So you'll find that this is where we're talking about cold calls, right? Sales calls to potential new customers. So this is last year's statistics. That is only 14% of the entire market. But the noise that's being made about this is tremendous. You know, if you use a dialer, you are an absolute, you know, bad person. Well, maybe not, because in the other 86% of cases, you're using it for other stuff, like proactive customer service, customer satisfaction surveys, cross-selling and upselling to existing customers, debt collection. Well, maybe that's not a very pleasant thing, but it's a necessary evil, I guess. And other, you know, other is bigger than sales to new customers. I don't even know what other is. So it's worth considering the difference between outbound and cold calling, which is a very small subset of that. A few examples of people that are actually using this Mitel product, both in the UK and further afield. And maybe a little bit about the 4 ways of doing dialing. I'm sure that most of you know them, but just to go very quickly through it, there are basically 4 ways of dialing outbound: preview, progressive, power, and predictive, and they range from the polite to the rather aggressive. Preview dialing, an agent will ask for the next person to call and then click dial and dial that person. They will manually classify calls. Progressive dialing is exactly the same, it's just that the button clicking is automated. So when they finish a call, they wait for a period of time and then they get the next call popped up and dialed. Power dialing is dialed from within the dialer and it filters out all calls which are non-productive. So things that are like busies, no answers, answering machines, and so on. And on the other hand, it doesn't actually reduce the wait time that much because it dials one-to-one. And this is where you've got predictive dialing, which is the source of all the bad publicity. And that is when we actually, the dialer uses mathematical artifice to actually try and predict when an agent will become free and dial, and how many calls to dial for that agent in order to minimize the wait time between calls. The price you pay for predictive dialing is that you will always generate some abandoned calls. Abandoned calls are calls where you actually have somebody on the line but no agent to give it to. Every predictive dialer does that. Some dialers manage to control it so they keep it within the law. The law is about to change, and I'm sure Neris will talk about that in a minute. And it's becoming more and more strict about these things. So using a dialer like the Mitel or our dialer is a good idea because it protects you against the big bad wolf that is Ofcom. So talking about regulatory regime, I'm going to go very quickly through this. Outbound dialing in the UK is controlled by 2 government regulators, as you probably know. One of them is Ofcom, and the other one is the ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office. The first one is concerned mainly with the policy on persistent abuse of automated calling systems. So basically, don't abuse that dialer. That's basically what it's about. Don't make silent calls. And the ICO monitors compliance with the Data Protection Act, including the PECR, the Privacy and Electronic Communications Regulations, which is a bit of EU law that's been incorporated into our statute book. And that deals with things like playing recordings and making sure that that people are protected in their privacy when you actually make calls. Both organizations have significant powers and they can fine people up to about £2 million. So, regarding Ofcom, these are the rules. So basically, if you have a dialer, you better stick to those rules. And there are 1, 2, 3, about 8 rules. 9 actually. The first and most important one is sticking to the 3% of abandoned calls. That is what is allowed at the moment. It will be only a recommendation in the future. The Ofcom is about to come up with new regulations this year, and they will harden that a little bit. All calls that you dial must present a valid number. Now this is even more. It's been in the news yesterday that the UK government is actually insisting that regardless of whether you're calling predictive or preview or progressive or by hand, you need to present a CLI. That is now the rule. If you don't, you're going to be fined. The message rule: if a predictive dialer abandons a call, the dialer must play a short, non-marketing message within 2 seconds of the phone being picked up. That is important, and that makes a call not a silent call. Silent calls are complete no-no, and there will be even more complete no-nos from this year. So this rule becomes even more important because if you don't play a recording, you will be making silent calls, in which case you will be taken away and shot. The 72-hour rule is following an abandoned call, the dialer must not attempt to dial the same number within 72 hours unless you can ensure that you have an agent for that. So you can't dial it predictably again within 72 hours. The 15-second rule is that once the call is dialed, it must be allowed to ring for a minimum of 15 seconds before attempting to hang it up. That's what I call the old lady rule. So basically, to ensure that the old lady can reach the phone before you stop ringing. The answer machine detection rule. So basically, if you use answer machine detection, there are two rules about this. One of them is the false positive rate. False positive is a call that you've identified as an answering machine, but is actually a real human being, which you're going to hang up on because you think it's an answering machine. Now, you need to have a reasoned estimate of how many calls of this type you're making. It's been legendarily impossible to make a reasoned estimate, so people have sort of improvised. Funnily enough, the reasoned estimate fits what they think it should be. So that will be removed, I think, from the regulations probably later this year, because everybody agrees that it's a bit of a fig leaf to hide behind. So at the moment, that's important. And then you have the 24-hour rule. So once a call has been automatically found to be to an answering machine, you can't call the same number with answer machine detection for 24 hours. And finally, the records rule. You need to keep records of all your dialing activity for at least 6 months. So as long as you stay clear of those rules, help yourself, dial as much as you want predictably, and it's perfectly legal. I'm not going to talk too much about the ICO rules because I think that Darren is going to be talking a lot about that and about the new regime that's coming in. There are basically two regulations at the moment that are important, and that's mainly the thing about not playing recordings to people. The system I'm talking about is compliant, and I think that it's important that we take compliance very, very seriously, both as a Mitel product, as a Noetica product, and generally in a market that's so jumpy about this and so sensitive to this kind of stuff. We have many measures that we can take and many tools built into the product to ensure that you remain compliant. So it's a good dialer, it dials very well, it does all kind of other stuff very well. Please bear in mind that it does this very well. So basically, you can be safe, which is probably quite important in this kind of negative atmosphere that we live in. I'm not going to talk to you too much about LPD, which is an interesting thing, a bit of technology that is patented that we've got that allows you to do answer machine detection safely. But if you're interested, there's a lot of information on the website about this, and I can provide you a lot more. I'm aware that I'm running out of time, so I wanted to talk a little bit about return on investment on scripting, because scripting is it's one of those things that is not must have. If you have a call center, you must have a telephone system. You must have telephones, headsets, desks, computers. But scripting, you could probably live without. So why should you have it, apart from all these 10 reasons I gave you earlier? And one of the reasons is that it will actually save you money or make you more money. And the reason for that is that it will reduce your average handling time. And there's a few figures here basically saying, even if you've got 100 agents and you reduce your handling time by 2% only, which is minute, then you will get a saving of 40 grand a year. And obviously the numbers get much higher when you are able to save a bit more. There's saving in training, and obviously there's obvious savings using a dialer instead of dialing manually. So I'll just leave these numbers hanging in the air. I'm not going to analyze them too much, but there is a financial, commercial case to be made for using this technology, particularly if they're safe. Thank you.